I've made no secret of my love of video games on this channel. I've been gaming since I was a kid, and I've basically never stopped. And the thing that I've learned in all those decades of playing video games is that part of what makes a great video game is a great soundtrack. But not all great soundtracks have great bass lines. But today we're going to talk about one that does. Hades is an indie game from Supergiant Studios that made a huge splash when it was released back in fall of 2020. It won a ton of awards, and it was nominated for Best Music at the Game Awards, which is kind of like the Oscars, but for video games. I think the best way that I could describe the soundtrack is spooky Mediterranean prog rock. Composer Darren Korb cleverly weaves together a tapestry of traditional Greek flavors, changing time signatures, eerie synths, and driving hard rock and metal. It's the perfect soundtrack to accompany you as you wipe out the demons blocking your escape from the underworld, but I think the reason why I like the bass lines in particular is because they're given a sort of visibility that I've never really seen done in a video game before. Once you clear a room of all the monsters, the music recedes, leaving just the bass as you decide what your next move will be. Now, dynamic music in video games is nothing new, but I've never heard it done quite like this, where the bass gets such a spotlight. Getting to hear it all by itself is really cool and gives us a chance to really understand the tone and character of the instrument. To my ears, it sounds like Darren is playing a jazz bass with a pick. There's a good amount of definition in the sound, and it has that characteristic 2-pickup growl. I went looking for pictures or video to verify this, and the only pictures I could find were of Darren playing jazz basses with a pick. So, I'm probably right? Maybe? Throughout the soundtrack, he seems to be using 3 distinct sounds. We have a clean tone, a slightly overdriven one, and then a full-on buzzsaw. The bass that I'm going to be using today to try and recreate that sound is my 5-string Armitage. Now, it has humbuckers instead of single coils, but I think it's going to be close enough, and I need to use a 5-string because I do hear a lot of low notes in there, down to like a D or even a low C. We're also going to be running a couple of pedals, the Dark Glass B3K for our slightly overdriven sound, and then the Slice of Pie Fuzz from Big Ear pedals. We're going to be running all of that into my computer via the Scarlett 2i2, and then using Reaper, where I've got a basic kind of Ampeggy preset set up, and that'll get us all the sounds that we need. Last but not least, we're going to need a pick, and the one that I've been really liking lately is this JHS Gravity pick. This thing is super thick, and I just love it, but they are $6 a pop. I just got this one with a pedal that I bought, and I love it, and I'm just so afraid to lose it. So JHS, could you just send me a box of these? These are awesome, but I ain't gonna pay $6 a pick for these things. Can't blame that shit on the tariffs. These have been $6 forever. Really quick before we jump into learning these bass lines, I'd love to tell you about Pyam, or Play Your Own Bassline. This is a monthly bassline challenge that I do where I give you a backing track, you record yourself playing to it, and then submit it back to me, and then I feature those on my YouTube channel and give you direct critique and feedback on your submission. All you have to do is go over to my Patreon page. I'll have the link down below. This is something that you can do for free. You do have to be a member of the Patreon page, but you don't have to give me any money if you don't want. But let's now jump into learning some of these bass lines, starting with the song Out of Tartarus. This song is heavily built around this really wonky 11/8 groove, and we're in the key of G. The root here kind of acts like this drone that the rest of the riff kind of always comes back to, and I feel like that's a big part of what gives this the whole thing like this Mediterranean vibe. There's a few instruments that Darren Korb uses on this soundtrack that are built off of using drones.
This is a balama, which I learned about when I spent some time in Turkey. It's just got this really cool sound, and the strings are like pretty loose, and it's just got like this weird, like a kind of a droney.
And that stuff is kind of just mirrored in the other instruments, like the bass. Now, something that I'm sure that Darren was doing when he recorded these is he's using the open strings to build out these riffs. But here's the thing, I really don't like alternate tunings, and I wasn't about to bust out a capo so that I could clamp down on the G there to give myself that open string. Doing either of those things probably would have made these easier, but I wanted to see if it was possible in standard tuning, and it is, even though it's kind of tricky. Through Asphodel is quite a lot more straightforward. Kinda. This song is in D, so when it does these crazy ascending lines, you can actually just use a lot of the open strings. I'm certain this one was originally recorded in drop D, but I'm just going to use this D on the low B string because I don't want a down tune. So let me go through this ascending line really slowly because I feel like it's the most iconic part of the whole song. So we start here on the low D, go up to the 5th, then a half step up, and then we switch to the next open string, which gives us time to shift up to frets 7 and 8, and then play the same thing on the next string. And then we shift down to the next half step down for this high string. And then we play this little pattern here. It gets that little trill there. The next section we get is this cool section where he uses something called double stops, where you're playing two strings at the same time. It's not something you get to do very often on a bass, and it sounds really cool. So we're going to be using this low D as a drone, and starting out with this F sharp way up here. This is a minor third, basically, but because we're an octave up, it's technically a 10th, but that gives us a minor chord. And then we're going to go up a half step, which makes it major on the F sharp. And then we'll drop all the way down to the B flat, which gives us a minor 6th. And then we'll resolve on the 5th. And then all together, it sounds like this. We get super spooky in Scourge of the Furies because we're using a lot of ghost notes. Now, a ghost note is where you're plucking the string, but then muting your fretting hand down here, and you kind of get this percussive sound, right? In the context of the riff, it kind of gives it these little spaces to breathe, which makes it feel really alive and interesting. Like, here's what it would sound like without ghost notes. Just not nearly as interesting. It's way cooler when they're like syncing up with those drum hits, so. The tricky part of this riff is definitely the time signature. It's an 11 again, but you can kind of think of it as groups of 5 and then 6. I don't even think I could count this and play it at the same time. It's just that wonky, but I don't count when I play some of this stuff because it's just too weird. You just kind of have to vibe with it sometimes. Maybe that's cheating. Maybe I'm a bad teacher for doing that, but that's what I do. So afterwards, we get these really fast chromatic runs, and this is where you really need to be able to use your pinky because you're using these first 4 frets. So I have small hands, so don't worry about the size of your hand. This should not be holding you back from doing anything you want to do, because if I, with my little tiny hands, can do it, you can do it too, I promise. Keep in mind here, you don't need a lot of strength to play with your pinky, you need dexterity, because it actually takes very little energy to push down the string and fret a note. Like I'm just like pulling the neck gently into me with just my pinky, and you can hear that just sounds fine. Like, it takes very little energy, so don't overexert yourself, because all you will do is slow yourself down and make yourself tired. Rage of the Myrmidons is where we get a little bit melodic. You get these like fifth on fifth on fifth action here, fifth, and then slide up to another fifth, and then get this little run down. I don't know, I think it just sounds really, really pretty, and it's very different from anything else we've played thus far. What's super interesting is how we get out of this and go back to the A section of the song. It looks like it's just doing these random jumps all up this one string, but once you understand the pattern, it makes a lot of sense, because all we're doing is going up a major third, down a half step, up a major third, down a half step, up a major third, down a half step, up a major third, until we hit this G, which is a fifth above the C, which is where our A section is centered around. Really clever thing. God of the Dead is the final boss music, and it goes so incredibly hard. This is another one of those songs where it would have been way easier if I put a capo on there or had like an open C to play this with, but alternate tunings be damned, I'm gonna do it in standard. The riff for this one is built around this weird scale that kind of drifts between major and minor, called the Phrygian dominant scale. Or is it? Cadence here made this video last year talking about this scale in particular, and it is both fascinating and hilarious. She does a better job talking about the theory of it than I ever could, so I highly recommend going over to her video and checking that out once we're done here. Normally this would be the part of the video where I would start to wrap things up. You sense that I'm getting to that part where I ask you to like and subscribe, and then you click away to go watch something else. But if you did that, it would be a huge mistake, because I actually have one more thing to show you. Zagreus, the player character in Hades, spends the whole game trying to repair the relationships in his life. With his dad, with his mom, his extended family, and his lovers. At the very end of the game, where you convince your mother to come back home and reconcile with your dad, who I will remind you is Hades, god of the underworld, you take this long trip down the river Styx in a boat driven by the skeletal boatman Charon. It's not just that you've beaten the game, because at this point you've actually beaten the game several times to get this ending, but this ending is so unique and different because this fulfills the entire goal that you've been working for the entire time, to reunite your family. And as you drift down the long river back to the underworld, through all the areas you've conquered along the way and the credits roll, there's a song that plays. I love this song so much that I got a couple of my friends, Adrian Baldwin and Sarah Hakes, to help me do a cover version of this song. You can listen to or download the full version over on Bandcamp, or see the music video that I made for it over on my video game channel, The Sticky Bandits. And if you're really nice to Adrian and Sarah, maybe I'll get them back and we'll do one for Hades too when that releases. Thanks so much for watching. AMP out.